Aztec used these to burn incense so they could communicate with the gods. Still smells of copal. Patoli is said to be one of the oldest games in America, played by all walks of life. Players were known to gamble all of their worldly possessions over a single round, from blankets and precious stones to their homes and even their family's freedom. The god of art and games, Makwilxochtli, is considered an active participant in the game, responsible with bestowing offerings upon the winner. So much on the line for a simple game. Some things never do change. These ear ornaments are in pristine condition. They contain a carved-out illustration of a winged beast with a pronounced trunk and a torch or staff in its hand. This type of jewelry is a symbol of wealth and prosperity, maybe even belonging to royalty. This polished piece of silver is lined with gold and inlaid with turquoise gems. It appears to be a decorative mirror of sorts. An ornate filigree depicting Ix Chel is carved onto its backside. Mesoamerican people used this stone as a tool for processing grain and seeds. Traditionally woven from fabric and stuffed with reeds and grains, the burial dolls are frequently shown holding something in their hand, like a musical instrument or a ball of yarn. In this instance, the doll is holding a toddler, perhaps signifying that the deceased was a mother. But this one is made from modern materials. I suppose Paul Vernier could have made it as a promotional toy. Miss Ortiz, your dedication and commitment to the village of Kuwaq Yaku is commendable. However, Paul Vernier does not accept your charges of responsibility for the terrible state of the village. In fact, the Board of Executives has decided, and your local government representative agrees, if you continue this crusade of slandering our good name, we will have no choice but to take legal action. From the office of Roberto Lavia, Chief Executive Officer, Paul Vernier. This is a promotional model of an oil derrick made out of cheap plastic and copper. There is a logo for a company called Paul Vernier on the base of it. This knife is a cheap plastic replica of those traditionally used to sacrifice llamas in the Inti Raymi or Sun God Festival. It was also occasionally used to perform trepanning surgery. The Inca believed that cutting a hole in the skull could relieve pressure to cure some diseases. Miss Ortiz, thank you for your recent inquiry. A water quality index, WQI, was calculated for river sites surrounding the village of Kuwaq Yaku from the samples you provided, and results have shown that the river sites should be classified as bad water quality. The results of the study have shown large-scale impacts that include siltation, chemical pollution, and heavy metal pollution. Turbidity and total solids exceeded the environmental limits. Water of high turbidity, hazy, murky water, cannot be used as potable water, and the high total solids also imply that it cannot be used as irrigation water as well, as this will damage infrastructure. It is most likely that any subsistence fishing that took place before is no longer possible at the affected river sites, thereby impacting negatively on people's livelihoods. Similarly, pH was in the high alkaline range as well as COD. These parameters were indicative of some chemical pollution in the river. pH, that is alkaline, hard water, is corrosive and can damage plumbing equipment and clothes. High levels of fluoride in the water poses the risk of diseases such as dental and skeletal fluorosis. The presence of pathogenic bacteria such as Salmonella also represents an immediate health risk for the local community. This cast iron conical mold was mainly used throughout the 60s and 70s to shape small gold ingots. Its unique shape causes the gold to settle at the bottom, separating it from impurities. The ruling family is displaced, reduced to nothing but a figurehead while we truly control the city. The reason for allowing them to remain in a position of seeming power is twofold. It allows us to focus on our search for the silver box, and it acts as a pacifier for the locals who are recalcitrant to any type of change. The cult of Kukulkan has gone too far. The time to strike is now. They push, and all we do is take another step back. If Unuratu is unwilling to do anything, then we should move forward without her. Kukulkan departs Paititi during new moon. Kukulkan returns with several other outsiders during the waxing of the moon. They argue. The next morning, the entire group, now in better spirits, leaves in their obsidian birds. When the crimson fire smokes, seek your mirror. Bit enigmatic that. I wonder what it's supposed to mean. Etzli gave me half of Unuratu's eclipse amulet. I get the moon, and he kept the sun. I suppose this means he expects to remove the darkness over Paititi. Tall order. I hope I don't let them down. Wife of Inti, daughter of Viracocha and mother of the founders of the Incan Empire. Likely another artifact extorted from the people of Paititi by the cult. The remains of the peasant savior have been moved to an undisclosed location. We've had reports of the cult stealing objects and artifacts and holding them hostage in exchange for docility. We will not allow such a sacrilege to happen to Manco. A 6-point mace, cast from copper, with an embedded axe blade. A fearsome weapon. The carving on this bowl depicts a procession of Maya carrying something of great importance to them. A silver square. What could that mean? This mural depicts some kind of voyage or pilgrimage undertaken by the Maya. Seems they carried an item of great import that traveled south to the source of the pink fish. The Amazon River, just like Jonah said. The world around them began to crumble. The people decided to move. The artifact entrusted to them urged them to travel south, lest it be seized by their enemies. From death to life, new moon to full, this temple serves as guardian to the silver box. Those worthy shall be sacrificed to the Red Goddess, she of the waning moon and she of the waxing moon, grandmother to all, life-taker and birth-giver. Yaskar Yahweh united the two sides, ending the war. However, their blood still boiled. In order to placate the soldiers, someone must be punished. Yahweh rounded up the merchants believed to be responsible for the conflict and sacrificed them. This jade mask would have been placed on a noble's corpse during his funeral. The artisans were reputedly able to create an almost exact likeness of the wearer. The peak of this mountain is hidden behind thick clouds. I can't be sure what these two smaller hills on either side of the mountain are supposed to represent. An adhesive made of tree sap and powdered bone hold the jade and other gems in place within the wearer's teeth. A crude drill, perhaps made of obsidian, would have been used to delicately carve out the notches required to hold the jewelry in place. A secondary party, a few days behind the main pilgrimage, reported strange things on the route. The beasts had become more ferocious, and the jungle itself more dangerous. The trees and vines gnarled and twisted, growing thorns as long as a man's finger and sharp as blades. This shows a basic sketch for a temple, rising from the middle of a city. If I squint, it sort of looks like a snake. It's difficult to make out. People settled between two rivers. They weren't alone. However, these outsiders don't appear dangerous. The elders of the village have lied to us. There is no beast underground. The howling we hear is only the wind rushing out through small caves leading to the surface. They've used fear to control us for too long. Once I make my way out of this infernal sweat bath, I will throw their lives at their feet. And in the moment the gods were satisfied Metnal did not kill his wife, a pelican landed at the accused's feet. This stunned those in attendance. This was a seabird, hardly ever seen this far inland. The representatives of the gods decided to see what the bird meant to do. It circled Metnal, flapping its wings and squawking softly, and then it opened its mouth and a half-eaten fish landed at Metnal's feet. This was understood by all as a sign of Metnal's guilt. He was quickly executed. The lone figure appears in a state of peace, as though waiting for something. The protectors failed, and are now doomed to recover what they lost. Rumors have long persisted of monsters, for lack of a better term, in the area surrounding the mission of St. John. The locals refuse to discuss these sightings. They grow sullen when they are mentioned and usually scurry off and hide in their homes. However, it is my fervent belief, once we have converted the populace, we will see these monsters as nothing but superstitions, shadows that disappear in the Lord's light. Another example of syncretic belief. This figure portrayed on the cross is not Jesus Christ, but Kukulkan. I suppose a parallel could be drawn between the two. This roughly drawn sketch shows St. John repelling a demon attack. Perhaps they plan to have this as one of the frescoes in the mission. Villager claims to have seen a strange creature in the streets. They followed it to a walled-in alley where it disappeared. Citizen describes similar experience in Upper City. Woke to discover something trying to climb in a second-story window. When she yelled, it dropped to the street and disappeared. We'll continue to monitor. How can these shapes be Incan when they look like airplanes? Oh, I see. They're insects of some sort. Archaeology is a very delicate field of study. You have to put yourself in the mindset of people and cultures who died centuries before you were even born. Humans interpret strange phenomena based on what they already know. If the Inca had seen planes, they might have assumed they were some sort of bird. Given that, these shapes may not be insects after all. Some of them look more like fish. This is the flight log from our plane. Miguel made notes about the long-term weather forecast. Warm, hot, and dry for the next 3 days. Highs in the low 30s, mostly clear skies with nothing but light rain expected. Based on his other entries, if Miguel had thought the chances of a severe storm were better than half, he wouldn't have flown us at all. But there was no storm predicted, let alone something serious. This is the story of local caverns rumored to be haunted. Ghostly noises coming from deep within the bowels of the earth. No one who's entered the caves has ever returned. Mysterious sounds, something between the booming of thunder and the howling of dogs, and a mysterious light glowing within. Oh my god, this is a penguin lawn ornament, painted and decorated and placed in a location of reverence. I shouldn't laugh, but it's so incongruous. The locals wouldn't be able to identify the animal it's intended to represent, and they certainly wouldn't be familiar with the material the statue is made from. There isn't any plastic in Paititi. I'd love to talk to whoever did this and learn why, what they think this penguin is. Every part of the world sees its own mythical, forest-dwelling bipedal creature. Around here, it's known as the Sisamite, the guardian of the forest. Described as large and ape-like, it's rumored to kill male humans on sight, but takes the females to its cave for mating purposes. The Paititians who wrote this believed that something called the Yashil lived beneath Paititi. According to this record, these beings are strongest during astrological events, which is consistent with the legends, but they also attack and feed on humans. But that's not the behavior that usually appears in the stories. From this description, what they call the Yashil is the same type of creature I encountered in Kuwak-Yaku. The Nowl is nothing more than a jaguar bound in this terrible armor, more of Dominguez's smoke and mirrors. He's leveraged a myth to make the people of Paititi fear the wilderness, to keep them here, to control them. You can see the claw marks where the jaguar tried to remove the mask. Poor thing. This skull is deformed, flatter and longer than what we consider normal. Some people believe this is evidence the Inca were contacted by extraterrestrials, but it's more likely the result of head binding, a human practice of deformation so ancient it predates written history. It also has evidence of trepanation, a medical procedure in which a hole is carved in the skull. The pilgrimage came to a fork of two rivers and decided to settle. They erected 2 pyramids and began their new lives as protectors of the box. During a fierce battle, a man of 2 bloods throws down his weapons and, speaking with passions, convinces the other warriors to do the same. They follow him from the battlefield into the city, where they behead several merchants whose initial bickering caused the war. Ill-suited to the local land, the Mayas' agriculture techniques of slash and burn soon led to a food shortage. At the risk of starvation, they entered into treaties with local pre-Inca tribes, gaining new technologies and crops. The traders arrived, bringing new goods, and then the farmers, with new crops and techniques. Eventually, as more and more of the outsiders arrived in Paititi, they eventually took administrative control. The Paititians made peace with each other and followed Yaskar Yahweh, recently acclaimed as emperor, to a site in the mountains to begin anew, certain they will not make the same mistakes as those before them. The surging population and lack of civil planning caused the settlement many problems. Farmers clear-cut jungle to use the fertile riverbanks for their crops, resulting in a devastating flood in the first heavy rains. Overhunting forced hunters to travel ever further to find game. Several groups, each vying for a controlling interest in the settlement, debated, often fiercely, on the best manner of solving these problems. Maya and Inca stood shoulder to shoulder against their brothers on one side, those who wished to retreat and start fresh, and those who wished to expand and conquer neighboring territories. Paititi flourishes under the watchful gaze of Yaskar Yahweh and his council. The city grows, temples are built, the people are peaceful, prosperous, and content. The surging population and lack of civil planning caused the settlement. Having not heard from Lopez, some among the leadership began to have their doubts about him. Our group dispatched south to investigate. We sent the natives in first, uncertain those in the city had not killed Lopez on his arrival. They returned with reports of how sick the city was, and we quickly formed a plan to utilize this to our advantage. We leave the city at first light, which is just as well, for a terrible disease has spread across it. Dead and dying line the paths and choke the streams. Many are saying it is punishment from the gods. Journal of Adelantado Perez. Dressed in native garb, we entered the city. Those healthy enough to resist our advance met us with spears. We bowed and told them Kukulkan Khan had sent us to cleanse the city of sickness. We administered balms and medicine to the city's leaders and those we thought worth saving, buried the dead, and comforted the dying. Slowly, the people came to trust and soon rely on our aid. The shadows loom long and dark, the mountain black as night, in mourning, as the strange pale men end the short but immensely productive life of Kayuaka Park. He whose yearning for greatness lashed this city to his shoulders and carried it upwards, who only ever asked for Enti to warm his brow as he worked, in the streams, or fields, or brickyards. Kayuaka Park made a deal with the strange men. He gave his life so that we may live ours, free, but under the new rule of these men from distant lands. Pure silver. From what I understand, Manco was a simple farmer. This must have been made posthumously as an offering to honor him. This shows a pilgrimage from a great city. This must be Manco, leading the priestess's ancestors out of Cusco. We found their hidden city easily enough, the coordinates from Trinity being correct. The natives did not trust us, and we entered the city with spears at our necks. There was a tumult against the people. We later learned a cohort of Inca had arrived the month before. Lopez spun a tale of our desertion from the Spanish army, for our hearts could not fathom the destruction they had and would continue to cause. And we'd gladly exchange any or all of our goods for shelter, if only for a short while. Reluctantly, they allowed us to remain in the city, on the condition we leave our armor and weapons in a small hut outside of the city proper. The men hesitated, and finally we agreed that 2 of us would remain outside, guarding the gear. The threat of the disease held at bay, we soon learned that Lopez had come and gone. Some of us began to suspect his betrayal, while others worried for his safety. The only course of action was to remain in the city, the reasoning twofold. We'd be ready when Lopez came to his senses and returned the artifact, or this would be the easiest point from which to mount a search for him. We struck an accord with the king. We would become his royal guard, physicians, and priests. The new methods of agriculture introduced by the cult of Kukulkan Khan have only succeeded in destroying more crops. First, the bee colonies collapsed. Then the cocoa crop failed. The earth is too damaged for anything but corn to grow, and the stalks are flimsy. We must take action, or Paititi will suffer a tremendous famine. This seems to represent Unuratu leading a group in rebellion. There is a near-total eclipse in the background. Unuratu approached the throne through the crowd. She walked beside it, but did not sit. "Why do we continue to believe this lie?" she asked the crowd. "Kukulkan Khan controls this city, and I will no longer wear a smile and pretend it is any different. I will not be his puppet, trotted out to wave and smile." The guards cut her off quickly and ushered her away. Then they advanced, with weapons drawn to disperse the crowds. Amaru returned for his brother's funeral, inconsolable during the burial and immovable after. The next day, however, he cut swiftly through the city. He unmasked the cult's leader, exposing them as outsiders. "It is time for the people of Paititi to take control of their city," he said, holding a decapitated head in one hand and the bloody knife in the other. "No longer will we bow to outsiders." Born to famine, raised in rebellion, orphaned but never alone, he rises as the sun. Another group of children is on their way from Khan, traveling via steamship. Of the 10 I have sent, please keep a close eye on the one called Amaru. He shows the greatest promise. However, He is prone to bouts of sullenness and often complains about missing his brother. I suggest a special curriculum be created for this one, something that will keep him too occupied to be homesick. This Spanish document relates one of the many stories of El Dorado, the Golden One. When the first Spanish exploration ships returned home with their holds full of gold, the news spread like wildfire, and the stories got more extravagant with each retelling. Rumors of the Golden City gave birth to countless expeditions to the New World. This camera belongs to the X700 line. Sam had one of those. I was so jealous. It's just the thing you'd want for an expedition to find a lost monument or civilization. This is proof that there were people coming here as recently as the 1980s. Even when modernity scoffs at them, some legends still manage to inspire people. The lens is cracked. Almost looks as though it was hit by a projectile of some type. Had to put the last remaining mule down yesterday. Broke its leg. Shame. Terrible shame. But I think I found it. Came across an abandoned village that simply must be Z. If only Father was still alive. I'm resting here for the night. Tomorrow I'll begin a thorough investigation of the site. The world will know a Fawcett discovered the lost city. This was written by an explorer in the mid-20th century who was looking for a lost city. He discovered a small trading post near the base camp, run by a woman named Kwama. He asked her if she knew any old stories which might help them find the lost city. By the time he wrote this, the explorer was near death and convinced she'd misled their expedition deliberately. Any squad venturing outside Khan must take special precautions in covering their tracks. We're close now, and the last thing we need is droves of tourists showing up trying to be the first to get the perfect selfies in the city. Follow the Napo to the Amazon. Nothing but jungle for weeks. Phillips got the fever and I had to drag the bastard through this forsaken jungle for the last few days. He kept me awake every night, screaming something about being covered in snakes. Just when we were about to succumb to exhaustion, we arrived at a small settlement built at the foot of an ancient temple. The locals fed us and nursed Phillips until his fever broke. After asking around, I found out there's another temple close by, twin to the first. Once Phillips regains his strength, we'll explore these temples. This journey will not have been for naught after all. That starched shirt Fawcett may be getting all the attention, but I know his time is almost up. The world will remember the Timothy Walker as the man who finally found the lost city of El Dorado. We've set up camp in a canyon. It was a grueling journey to get this far. We'll rest here a few days, get our bearings. Some of the men need patching up, and I wouldn't mind one good night's sleep. The men say something came through the camp last night. The jungle is getting to them. I keep telling them that we're close and we need to keep it together. One of the scouts has found a temple of some kind up ahead. We'll start construction of bridges and ladders this morning and head out from camp this afternoon. Damn this place. Damn this forsaken jungle. It holds a jewel just out of reach and then sweeps your legs out from under you. We've almost made it across that bottomless pit. Some kind of altar beckons from the other side, under a giant stone face that seems to mock our efforts. Something attacked the camp. Some men claimed it was panthers. Others said something more sinister. Half the crew insist on abandoning the expedition. I had to dress one man down. Made an example of him. All I need is one more day. One more lousy day. bringing reinforcements.
What? I hope you know what you're doing.
Me too.
Commander, we have eyes on Graf. He's with the E-Shield. She's what? Don't get distracted. Take her out. High Council in position, holding perimeter. Repeat, High Council is secure. This is Commander Rourke. The entire High Council is here to personally oversee our victory. We will hold the perimeter at all costs.
To the temple.
We're pushing through too. Almost there. Where's Dominguez?
He's inside the temple. We're so close.
Molto Menaka!
Thank you, Kukulkan, for this gift of renewal. We are prepared to receive your power. They're with you? This ritual is mine to complete! They've chosen wrong. It's all wrong!
No! It was always theirs. Give us the box.
No. Never. I must protect Paititi.
We all create destiny. Not just you. All of us. Together.
Headstrong to the end. Attack!
This is Commander Rourke. All remaining units hold the perimeter. Breach the gate! All units! Solid! Hold them at all costs. Ritual is nearly complete. This is Rourke. When the ritual is completed, you will all be saved, and those who gave their all will be rewarded. Dominguez, that sentimental activist. You know that, right? And so Trinity will run everything. Do you think Trinity cares about Paititi? I don't think yes. You're on side. one. I'm surrounded. Out of ammo. No! Please! No!
Jonah, Rook is dead. I'm going after Dominguez to stop the ritual.
We'll hold them off as long as we can.
All full up. Can't carry any more. This staff has a jury-rigged flintlock mechanism similar to those from European firearms. The cultist priests must have used this during their ceremonies to awe the crowds. In an effort to reduce the possibility of disease entering Paititi, Emperor Sheikah hereby temporarily bans all citizens from exiting the city. Anyone currently beyond the city's limits will not be authorized to re-enter. Paititi is still recovering from a recent epidemic, and any other outbreaks could tip the already precarious balance. By order of the cult of Kukulkan. Someone's taking this old walkie-talkie apart. Were they making an attempt at reverse engineering, I wonder? The city's priests, or shamans, if we mean to differentiate between the heathens and those who toil in the Lord's light, were the first to come forward. The first to listen, to hear of the state of the outside world. And thereupon, several of them felt completely cheated and begged to be baptized. They reasoned rightly. Their worship and trust was misplaced in the traditional deities of these lands. For as one stated, if your God has brought you here, across the world, then he truly must be the most powerful, and only a fool would not bow to such a being. We will teach these shamans English, and have them teach the population of Paititi. In order to not upset an already delicately balanced situation, all members of Trinity will adhere to the following rules. Limit excursions in the city. If leaving the compound is unavoidable, always wear the cultist uniform. Do not carry modern weapons. Avoid direct contact with Paititians when possible. Turn mirror 1 to the left. Follow the beam of light to mirror 2. Direct mirror 2 across the chamber diagonally. Return to mirror 1. These seem to be instructions of some kind, but I can't make out the rest. This figure must be the Owl, the mythological beast stalking the outskirts of Paititi. Now this is a fascinating concept. The Miracle Club. Come meet people that share your beliefs, devotion, and taste for adventure. Create lifelong memories as you travel the world together. It's a Christian singles group dedicated to visiting pilgrimage sites. This document describes the founding of the mission. There were 4 solar eclipses in this region around that time, in 1521, 1538, 1539, and 1543. Spanish missionaries reported that during each one, a vision of John the Apostle appeared on the site. So in his honor, the mission of St. John was built here in 1544. This is an official document issued recently by the Holy See. In consideration of this mission having been badly damaged by an unusually violent and entirely unexpected volcanic tremor, They sent requests to every Spanish-speaking diocese, asking them to consider sending missionaries to restore and rebuild this holy site. This document outlines the goals and works of the Mission of St. John. In addition to their individual spiritual goals and their outreach programs, the people here are clearly passionate about contributing to the nearby communities. Education, literacy, healthcare, even donating a portion of the food they raise. This Spanish document is fascinating. It tells the story of several natural disasters which struck this area. A flood, a fire caused by lightning, and a severe volcanic tremor. In each instance, buildings on this site were badly damaged, requiring considerable rebuilding. John, son of Zebedee, one of Jesus' apostles, also called the beloved disciple. He and his brother, James, were known for their impetuousness and temper, which prompted Christ to start calling them Boanerges, sons of thunder. John is credited with writing 5 books of the New Testament, the Gospel of John, the 3 epistles of John, and the Book of Revelation. He's the patron saint of love and loyalty, as well as writers, publishers, and scholars. One of his symbols is a serpent in a cup, which is linked to his patronage of victims of poisoning and burns. Strange, there are only 7 stations. This must be based on an older tradition. Jesus takes up the cross, falls the first time, meets his mother. Then Veronica wipes his face before he falls the second time. Then he is crucified, and finally entombed. St. John was the last of Jesus' apostles to die, and the only one whose life didn't end in martyrdom or suicide. As a writer of 5 books of the New Testament, he's the patron saint of theologians and scholars. Because of his long life, he was able to take on several students who continued his teachings after he died, establishing a line of religious study that remains unbroken to this day. Dominguez forbade us from mingling with the locals, didn't want us corrupting them. Luckily, one of the priests developed a taste for bourbon, and as long as I brought a pint with me, he'd lend me his costume, mask and all. Walking through the lower city was like traveling 500 years into the past. This obsidian-tipped arrow was snapped in half. It looks similar to those used by Unuratu's rebels. If they went up against Trinity with these primitive weapons, they never had a chance. Do not leave the city. Those who leave become cursed, forced to wander the jungle, and never find peace. Location found. Hidden. Terrain difficult to traverse. Seems safe from the strangers intent on forcing us into slavery. This wooden firearm is almost an exact replica of a modern assault rifle. The artisan who made this must have had an excellent memory, or worked from a model. Perhaps a weapon stolen from Trinity. This hard hat is decorated with peacock feathers and what seems to be the likeness of a jaguar. I've left and come back, and no demons haunt me. Was I just lucky, or has the cult lied to us? What do they have to gain from keeping us here?